Hi, I'm Michael Smith for Health Talk. Tonight I have a very special show. I have Teresa Morros from Brain, Nevada.
Yes.
And we're doing a show for Brain Injury Awareness Month in March. And welcome to Health Talk.
Thank you.
We've done some stuff in the past promoting awareness, and you now have your own with a consulting firm? What do you do?
Actually, I pioneered what is considered the next step after having a brain injury or acquired brain injury. So I actually have a full facility where individuals can come, and we do a range of things from, I kind of look at it as a whole person, a full person approach. And so at Brain, we do physical, and then also look at, nutrition, how people eat, the fluids that they're intake, of course the exercise, and then sleep. Sleep is a huge thing. And then the empowerment piece, like sometimes after having a brain injury, you feel like you're just existing. So where do we find the new purpose? And then and a lot of times getting back to work.
Well, that's a major getting back to work, because your routine is what keeps you alive, and something to get out of bed and look forward to.
Yeah.
She's a consultant, or she's a teacher and helps people. I'm actually a person that had a brain injury, so I depend on people like her to help people like me. And because I remember the worst thing about this to my parents was that we didn't know what to do.
Exactly. And I think it's really tough, even still. It's so misunderstood, and I think you get a lot of information, that's handed out from case managers or, social workers at the hospital or facilities, but then it's like, what do you do with it? And after a trauma like that, for you as an individual or the family members, it's overwhelming. And a lot of the times, caseworkers and social workers might give you all the information. You don't hear it. You take very little in just because of the trauma yourself. And a lot of the times you're left and not knowing what direction to go.
Well, I remember the early stages, maybe even still, I could hear, but I wouldn't retain if it's over 24 hours. So what I used to have to do was record doctors or even
Right.
whatever I was doing, and then if I put it on paper and then read the paper, for some reason it stuck.
Right.
And then, but it takes a while to figure out what your weaknesses are.
Correct. And then I think the other thing of it is the big thing is identifying it, like what you're saying, the weaknesses, and then having a plan of attack. And a lot of the times that's stuff that you find out trial and error. And if you're by yourself, family members, the other thing is depending on the type of injury, where the injury is in the brain, how you're affected. A lot of the times you're treated differently based on, what you have to work with. Like you could be physically sound and it's just in the inside, and a lot of people think you're faking it. And so that's
exactly right.
Huge. And it's a huge misunderstanding about what somebody goes through. And a lot of times you hear and you can even read and see, but what you try to portray and get out can be totally different.
Well, I remember in the very beginning, once the doctor said it was a brain injury, it seemed like all other tests stopped on the body.
Yeah.
And as it turned out, I had a broken back too.
Yeah.
Undiagnosed, it just healed over time.
Correct.
So I was in a lot of pain, and then once the brain injury focus started, they just let me have a little bit of therapy with a psychologist in the very, very, very beginning. The psychologist kind of helped, but what helped even more was once I got to a group, we could all share our experiences, because what we kind of found out was the doctors didn't know what the heck they were talking about.
Yeah, I bridge with a lot of doctors right now because, and one doctor had told me, and I didn't realize it, and once he had said this, it made a ton of sense. They go to school and they learn and they get to a certain point, and obviously their passion is to help people, and they do an amazing job saving people's lives, but it stops there, and then they can't, so they don't get to see the long haul, they don't get to see the follow-up, and they don't get to be in the trenches. So that's kind of like why programs like what I've started is really important, because we're in the trenches working on it day to day. And then a lot of times, unfortunately, they're dictated to by the insurance companies what they can and can't do for people. And so I have kind of stayed clear of the insurance game, because I don't want to tell people what they can't do. I want to see what they can do. And a lot of my program and what I actually coached, because I'm not a doctor, I'm a certified brain injury specialist now, and I pride myself on getting that credential, but I also feel like I'm that coach, because, nobody knows. The doctors don't know. None of us know our inner strengths. And what is it going to take in that inner strength that is going to create that passion to get us back out here? My son used to say it. We all fall at one time in our lives, but what really matters is what we do and how we pick ourselves up and go forward. And that is huge, and we live by that. I live by that, and I really try to help individuals understand that, and it's about picking up. It's about moving forward, taking that step, even if it's one step, making a step in the right direction to continuously be better.
Well, that's perfect advice, because I remember my generation, we kind of thought we're like John Wayne. We can always tough it out, fight it out, and I did everything I could to get back to my
100%.
life back to being normal, and it just wasn't going to come back. I lost my mathematics. I had a frontal lobe injury. And then in the very beginning, I got a lot of attention because I was kind of deformed. And once I had plastic surgery, they used at the Brain Injury Association, they used to put me front in the front. And then once I got the plastic surgery, I was no longer the fundraiser guy. But in any case, once you get rid of that ego problem and figure out you need to do baby steps, and it is just a little success can give yourself some a little bit of ego, because in the very beginning, you don't even know how far back you've gone.
And you can't. You don't identify, and a lot of times the reality and as you start getting better, a lot of times that's when the anger starts happening, and it's a catch-22. It's good to see it because it means you're getting better, but then on the other hand, how do you release that, that feeling? How do you understand those triggers? And then you got to be really careful, because now it could be a possible learned behavior that can escalate as well. So it's completely so misunderstood, and every person is different. And I'm glad that you kind of said the old, John Wayne kind of like, don't let them see you sweat, and pick up the pieces, and no pain, no gain. And it's tough, because I have that warrior personality, and but really understanding the signs. And with the brain, I think the biggest thing is to make sure that there's so many things that are important that it needs. It needs to be fueled properly. It needs the proper nutrition. There's no doubt about it. It needs the right fluids. It makes me so angry that, that I get a lot of my clients will walk in with Gatorade or something, and I'm like, did you just do a marathon? And they're like, no, this is good for you. And I go, no, if you didn't do a marathon, it's not good for you. It creates swelling on the brain, too much sodium.
I didn't know that.
Oh, yeah. I mean, the sodium and the sugars. And,
well, I knew the sugar, but I didn't know that about Gatorade.
Absolutely, the high sugars.
That's important stuff.
It is.
These little things are big.
Your brain does not flush like it did, and and if it's not flushing that, what's it doing? It's creating swelling, inflammation. And you need to really be aware of that.
That's a major. I remember probably the first maybe 3 years, I would get home from, I was in brain injury rehabilitation for years. I don't know how many years, maybe 4 or 5. And I'd get back, and it was an 8-hour session, and each day for 5 days. And I'd get home, and my brain hurt so much, I used bag of peas, frozen peas, to cool off my head. It seemed like everything was hot.
Yeah.
And but I might have been drinking the wrong thing. I might have been drinking sugar.
Well, and eating, having the right foods that the brain loves. There's certain foods that the brain just absolutely loves avocados, good nutrition. It just, that was what my son lived by, and it made all the difference in the world. And he knew that if he did not eat good, he paid for it. And
But-
so that was his discipline, and he would have consequences from it.
Well, I remember one of the best things that I was able to do from people like yourself was I had a book that I could look at every day and retain memories of what
Right.
to do.
Right.
Kind of a memory book, and so I would keep almost a dialogue of what we did each
Right.
day and what the ill effects were. I wouldn't remember it the next day, but I got to, so I remembered that book. And it really helped a lot, because if you know what you eat and then the reaction to what you eat.
Right. You get to the point where if you can get over to that other side of the pinium, and you know when you put something in your body that your body responds to negatively, then it's a different scenario. But a lot of the times when we have clients that come in, they don't realize that they are the reason they don't feel good. And you have to take baby steps a little at it, like what you're saying. You have to dribble on them a little at a time, because they don't want to hear that the food is what's causing them, a lot of pain. But a lot of the times those are the things that we start with.
Excellent. Well, let's say I just got hurt, and then when the doctors clear me to go out and see some of your skills, how does the program start? Do you do like an evaluation type situation?
I do. I do an individual evaluation. I kind of not only do it with the individual to see what they identify with, and then I also like to meet with family or support. And then from there, what we like to do is create an action plan. And then, I like to see people for at least a 3-month, at least 3 months at a time. Sometimes it's longer. I have individuals that come to me once a week.
Like I told you, I was in there.
2-3 times a week, sometimes. So it just depends. But the first thing would be a full assessment.
Well, I remember I was in there for years, so it depends on what your situation is. But I also remember that once we got evaluated, it was just to kind of getting people into a routine.
Yeah. And it's a discipline. And a lot of the times it's pieces of the puzzle. I mean, if you have somebody comes in, they can do physical. But honestly, unless they want to put all of the pieces, it's just like the doctors. You go to the doctor and you want the doctor to prescribe a medicine, and then it's supposed to be a done deal. It's not. There has to be a discipline that comes along with it. So, I'm very adamant about, don't just engage in one part of the program. You need to engage into all of it. The nutrition aspects, the sleeping is gigantic. For somebody, having that restorative sleep is really, really important.
Well, once we get going on the evaluation, you set up a program of advice for how long you should sleep and nutrition, and you said about working out.
Yeah, working out, and then empowerment. Like what are they doing for themselves? How are we rewarding? How are we moving forward? Where's our purpose? Where's our passion? What's the reason we get up and eat right? What is the reason, that we work out? What's our why? And so that's a big part of it.
Excellent. And then after 3 months, you have a reevaluation to see what you're progressing at?
Yeah, looking at kind of like what their goals were. And sometimes it's just we're scratching the surface at that point. I look at it sometimes that it takes that long to start pulling back the layers and really getting to know somebody. Because at first, when it depends on how long after their traumatic brain injuries happened. If it's fairly soon, you can pretty much, what you see is what you get kind of scenario. If it's been years and years and they want to make a change because they're at crisis, it's a different story. It could take me 3 months to actually pull back layers to get to know the person and find out really what ticks, because otherwise it is surface. Because a lot of times when people come into my office, they do everything right. Do you know what I mean? And you honestly don't realize that some of the things that you do in your everyday cause more problems for you when you have a brain injury.
Well, I remember when I first tried to become independent, I had a lot of fires. I couldn't remember that I had something on the stove.
Yeah.
And then
wow.
I just start cooking, and then I'd forget it was on the stove, and
Right.
a lot of smoke. It was
Right.
I just didn't think about it.
Right.
I don't know why.
And it's not intentional. So even when I say that somebody comes in and goes, oh, I do this, or, I eat really well, or I drink a ton of water, and, but once I start pulling back those layers and finding out the what, when, why, and where, then we can really get to work. And that's and then when we have the breakthroughs, there's just nothing better.
Oh, it's definitely better. From those fires, I learned that I have to see to continue to remember. So this efficiency kind of had like a wall dividing the living room from the kitchen, so I didn't see the actual cooking. So once that happened, I started putting a stool, then watching my cooking and staying in the room because I couldn't stand up for very long periods of the time at that time.
Right.
Then I watched the cooking and I made sure I put it on the plate and then I made sure I ate it because a lot of those steps were different. And then I wish I still had something where I could see my food in the refrigerator too, because a lot of times I forget to eat because I didn't see the food.
Right.
And so we had to work on a lot of things. My parents, so if they left me home for a weekend, would count plates. They'd give me like 3 plates of food, and then they'd make sure I ate 3 plates, and they'd check it off. And a lot of little tricks we developed from that.
And I'm glad that you kind of mentioned that because that's a lot of what you have to do. You can't expect that when you bring home your brain injury survivor to do things like that necessarily like what they did before. And a lot of it is that you uncover it years and years as you continually go on. And it's what I always say is that you got to go inside their box, how they're processing, and figure out how they're thinking. Because a lot of the times they might have, if you have a task that takes 7 steps, they might be able to do 4 steps with no problems. And then they get to that 5th part of it, and they've got a block or a break or something. So instead, because you create a mask a lot of the times, it's hard for you to communicate to somebody, oh, I don't know what to do, help me. You just repeat this over and over again, and you feel like you're never getting anywhere. So if you can see what they did up to the 4 or 5 steps, and then help them get past that so that they can maybe pick up and go and finish, and you can't tell them. You have to walk it with them a lot of the time. Sometimes you have to physically move their arms or their whatever they're in the middle of and do to help them get to that other side. And it's a process. You know, I always tell a story about my son. It was probably about 4 or 5 years after his traumatic brain injury. And he was doing really well. I mean, he had ridden his bike across the country. He had finished high school. I mean, he had done all of these amazing things that nobody thought he would. And we were in the kitchen one morning, and he would always dump the garbage or the recycle, and then everything was fine.
That's
and
good.
Yeah, I mean, he participated in the household like you would never know he had a brain injury. So this one morning, he dumped the recycle, and our routine is that on the bottom of, and he wasn't the only one that dumped recycle. If it was full, Dad would do it, or one of us would do it. But if it got empty, you always grabbed extra bags and put them down in the bottom. So if you pulled it out, there was another bag.
Oh, that's efficient.
Yeah. So my son, this one specific time, took the bag and dumped it, came back. There were no refill bags. And he stood there, and he walked around a couple of times, and it was just strange. It like hit him, and he drew a blank. His body posture changed. Everything changed about him. And I remember him saying, I can't, what do I do? And I looked at him, and, you know, of course the whole thing, because it's your common sense, it's a no-brainer. Like, well, what do you mean? Go, and I caught myself saying, you know, silly, go in and grab them out of the pantry. And I caught myself, and I'm like, and I had to recalibrate, go backwards, and realize, you know what, that's the first time since his brain injury he had to replace those bags. He honestly didn't know what to do. And little things like that, you don't know when the missing pieces are. And so that's what I always say. It's that patience and not assumption. It could be there first.
That's actually major awareness.
Huge.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of times I remember a lot of people, even at the brain injury treatment place, who would forget that some people are different to other people.
And it appears to be bullying at times, and that's kind of what, like we were saying, we were jokesters about everything that we did that was silly, or, we made a lot of fun of it, not only of ourselves as we learned through it, but also Josh would make fun of himself, and that was just kind of humor, got us through a lot of the stress. But that doesn't work for everybody.
No, it's actually a very slippery slope. 'Cause I remember we lost a lot of people in treatment because they get frustrated, and
Very
then
much so.
they expected people to react a certain way, and you guys aren't mind readers, so you needed a little bit of feedback. But if the person that was upset got too upset, then they didn't come back.
Well, and I think for me on the outside is being the environment of somebody that, helps individuals with brain injuries. It's just ask questions, give them an opportunity. And if they're struggling, just take that time. It's okay to ask a question. Don't assume. And I've had to learn that the hard way myself.
Well, one thing I liked about your program, do you have your client come with their spouse or their parents together? Because I remember I was at the Detroit hospital, and they were different than, I started at University of Michigan.
Right.
Then they transferred me to Detroit hospital, and then they insisted on the spouse or the parent to come with us to the meetings.
Right.
And you soon found out how many people were lying to their parents or their spouses about what they could or couldn't do and what the treatment was. And then they found out that they were trying to fake like they were better than they were.
Yeah, and that's, it's, the thing of it is we call it masking.
Yes.
Everybody wants to be better. Everybody, I do it. I catch myself, I've been sick with a cold, and, I keep telling myself, I'm okay, I'm getting past it, where, I'm struggling, So I get it, and that's kind of what, but no, on my initial stuff, I do like to have the clients come in with their loved ones or their family members, because I want to see how they identify. And we're very honest about that. And so I usually like to meet with the survivor first, see what they go over, and then I bring in a family member, and then I do a comparison. And I try to be very transparent on everything. And then when we have sessions, if I feel that there's something, it's an open book policy with me. So if there's an issue, it is open communication. We all talk about it, because a lot comes along with this injury of manipulation too, because there's a lot of it's no fault because of the brain injury, but it doesn't mean that there's not consequences for the behavior. You just have to know how to step when there's triggers. And the other thing is that creating a real positive accountability piece versus a negative. And it depends on who you deal with, how their brain injury, how their lifestyle is, how their family dynamics is. And I get clients that embellish that they are these gangsters, and when they aren't, and then I get them
Something they're not.
Yeah, that they go home and they do everything. They do laundry, they're the Cinderella of the house, and they can't get them off the couch, depending on where their injury is and if they've got initiation or whatnot. So, it's sometimes it's real to them, and sometimes it's their coping tool.
Well, before we go on too much farther, could you go out and give out your contact information, and we'll throw it out the end,
Yes,
too.
so it's Brain Nevada, and that stands for Brain Recovery Assistance Institute of Nevada, and our office number is 775-440-1234, and we're usually there Monday through Thursday. And we also do, I guess I should mention there, we do a free support group every Tuesday from 11:30 to 1.
And that's where I found out particularly that it seemed like everybody in the group had different injuries, but we could speak of things that were like, and that helped us all think that we weren't, because when you're by yourself, you think you're crazy.
Correct.
And then once you got into a group, you say, well, I'm not crazy, but I don't have the symptoms that he has, but I have some symptoms like he has.
Right.
And I remember I used to be stuck on stair. I'd be on stair, and then just, I don't know, some kind of seizure, I guess. And then someone would say my name, and I'd come out of it.
Right.
And I still haven't met anybody in that area, but I used to always fall down for a second, too. My brain would stop, and I'd just fall down, and I'd just get back up. I was just kind of used to it. And then you find other people had things far worse. And then you started feeling less sorry for yourself.
Correct.
Because like my seizures weren't bad. It was bad enough to take away my driver's license, but wasn't bad enough that I had required hospitalization or anything like that.
Right,
so
right.
you learn really how lucky you are, and also you find out that you can get better, and that's a big deal.
Yeah, yeah. I think, and so we do it during the lunch hour in case people are working, that they're able to come. Because it's hard sometimes in the evenings for them to take away from their time. And if they're working, a lot of the times if they've had a brain injury, it's exhausting. They're exhausted, and to get them to go out and to connect to that, it's really hard. So that's why I went ahead and did it during the day. So I encourage them to bring their lunch, or they can go down to the deli, and we make it kind of casual, but I've changed it a little bit. We share, but we also are about solutions. Picking up the pieces and moving forward, because that's something that my son was so strong about, and he's definitely a part of everything that we do. And you just have to keep moving and wanting to be better every day.
Excellent. And then do you work with the employers at all for telling them how to help them get back into the workplace?
Absolutely. So I have a contract with the state of Nevada. And
Excellent.
So I have job developers that work with me. And I do an assessment on everybody so that because I come from, I think even though they don't have a brain injury and they might have a disability or a developmental disability or something, everything comes from the brain.
Oh.
So it's
Yes.
we got to understand how everybody processes. So I usually am that person that can help, and then I can also help with the employer.
Excellent.
And so how we can make sure that the environment understands. And then also sometimes even educating the natural support that'll be working with our clients.
Well, just for coincidence, I lost my job recently with the Douglas County. I used to tape or record the meetings for the Board of
Yeah.
Commissioners, and then they they outsourced it, and so I needed to figure out something to do to get out of bed.
Yeah.
And I don't know where to start to ask for help. So you might be the right place to ask for help.
Definitely go to your local Department of Employment and Training and Rehabilitation.
Excellent, because I didn't have a clue where to go.
Oh, absolutely.
And then before we go any further, I wanted to talk about real quick that there's brain injury places to live. One was where I live is Sky Forest Acres, and it's called Accessible Space, and it's a place for disabled people to live. There's 2 places in Reno. There's 1 place in Carson City that I know of. There's 1 place in Tahoe. But I think if we got around promoting accessible space, maybe we could get them some property to put their buildings on. And they also have their toll-free corporate number is 1-800-466-7722, and the company's called Accessible Space, and they're out of St. Paul, Minnesota. And then maybe you can get your loved ones some independent living and an affordable housing, because it wasn't for them, I wouldn't be able to do anything, because I need a bench in the shower to sit on, I need a pole to get off the toilet, and I need all these things to help, because I use a walker. And then why don't we go ahead and wrap up with your contact information again, and
Sure.
we'll have to bring you back for another show, because
Okay.
this is a big topic.
No problem. It's Brain Nevada, and the phone number is 775-440-1234, and our office is located in South Reno at 9475 Double R Boulevard, number 6.
Excellent. And also on YouTube, Nevada Trails TV, I have some shows from most recently a lecture from Dr. Doss on brain awareness, and that's a good show to check out for your the study of the brain. And then in the past, we did a show on sports concussions with Dr. Finoff, and that's a great show because trying to get to the coaches of football to do concussion protocol. And then we did some other shows. And my first public access show was out of Royal Oak, Michigan, and it was about traumatic brain injury. I can't believe this is my life. And you'll see me when I was, a kid at 33. And anyways, thank you for being on Health Talk.
All right, thank you so much.
I really appreciate it. And, if you have an injury, you get your loved one some help, because we're all there. And she knows her stuff. And nutrition was one of the big things that brought me back. And I appreciate your time. Thank you very much.